I started in procurement, there was a more of a tactical world. And one of the responses to a supplier applying for a price increase would be to freshen them up. This is a very tactical response, and I acknowledge that. But one of the issues would be, can we say, yes, we'll agree to the increase, but we'll fix prices for 90 days, because it's very hard for suppliers to fix prices for extended periods of time without including a risk premium. But we will also buy from somebody else as well. And the purpose of that is to split the business, perhaps 85-15, perhaps 70-30, not necessarily 50-50, but you're essentially trying to use competitive tension to ensure that if the supplier applies for a price increase to you, that they not only are aware of the fact that you're going to challenge it, but that they are in a competitive situation. Now, for some of you on the call, this may be anathema, because it goes against the leverage, the aggregation, the default assumption that underpins so much contemporary procurement, that volume economies of scale lead to better outcomes. So I acknowledge it'll dilute our total spend and may increase total cost. However, what the tactic involves is saying to the supplier, perhaps the supplier with 85% or 90%, if your cost control is at least equal to or better than your competitor, then your percentage may increase. But if your cost control through time is poorer, then we will reduce the proportion we spend with you. It's crude and it's tactical, I get that. I put be careful because clearly if you're reducing your volume, you may move along the cost curve and you may pay a premium because you're not gaining the economies of scale that you were. Now, those are some really tactical responses, and I get that. So let's move on to some more thoughtful responses. And I think this is the single most common response that you would expect from somebody who is behaving in a professional way. So the title of the session is about professional procurement rather than tactical games. So the most common way of looking at price increase requests is to say, I get that there are some costs you can't control. We understand that. However, our expectation is that we will offset any unavoidable cost increases with corresponding and possibly counterbalancing cost reductions elsewhere. Now, this is the world of bargaining. And if any of you are familiar with the concept of win-win in negotiation, it essentially involves us saying to the supplier, yeah, put away your charts. We get that diesel is rising. We get that there's a shortage of containers. We get that shipping costs are at historically high rates. However, you have also gone through digital transformation. We also expect suppliers to be able to identify improvements either in supply chain management or in effectiveness that you share with us instead of simply claiming value from us. So offset, I think, is the classic example of behaving professionally. It's not denying that cost increases are real. It's saying some of them are. Let's see what we can do to offset them. Let's jump to one of the questions I was asked beforehand. What are some of the value adds that can be procured over and above price? I'll put a list there, which I'm not going to read out, but let's just talk to you about fixing price. So for many of the organizations on this call, price stability, a certainty as to what prices will apply in 3 months or maybe even 180 days, might itself have a value. I've written here that I think cost down, cost out projects is one of the things that most of us will become involved in. So when I heard that example there of really reflecting the fact that ring fencing the supplier's profit is important because it's a small market and margins are tight, what's really being described is a level of collaboration is quite different to the tactical games that I've been describing previously. And what I've done in some of the contracts that I'm involved in at the moment is try to institutionalize cost down, cost out workshops between suppliers and the client, because we know inflation is going to be, if not in double figures, close to double figures. And the expectation is, how do we create an expectation that we're not going to be involved in simple periodic price rise request and some confrontational discussions about what's fair and appropriate, where we negotiate using salami slice, but rather we acknowledge that we will pay what is justifiable, and simultaneously we'll work on taking cost out if we can. Here's a mechanism that I'm trying to institute. It's based on a quarterly approach. Essentially, it works like this, and I'm sure a number of you will reflect this. The client, i.e. us, and the other party brainstorm, yes, prices are due to rise by 5%. How can we find countervailing, counterbalancing, offset initiatives? We brainstorm what we could do. It could be packaging, it could be committing to volume, it could be a longer term commitment. We identify a number of opportunities. They're written up as one-page business cases. What's the cost, benefits, ease of realization? There's then a BIT team, a business improvement team, that reviews them and says, no, 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 yes, no, no. And then some of those projects are then launched as mini projects to try and create joint collaboration. Now, a number of you will say, that's SRM, Paul, it's supplier relationship management. You're stealing something that's already done. But I think that's what offset means. We can't just negotiate once as an event. I think we have to have a series of initiatives, because inflation is an ongoing process. It's not going to be a one-off event. What was the phrase I Googled? I think I Googled forward buy to see forward buying, and amazingly, my name came up as the third or fourth Google response under a glossary that I wrote once. So the logic of forward buying is that in an inflationary market, you actually commit not just to your immediate requirements, but you forward buy. And this has a meaning in commodity speculation that is not relevant here. But you essentially say, we are going to aggregate our spend and give the supplier some visibility. We've already heard the benefit of that in respect of shipping, where on the shipping rates, the supplier was willing to reciprocate in a bargaining or win-win situation, that if you guaranteed to buy a certain amount of space or volume, then the supplier would give you something back. So it doesn't mean that you hold stock. It could be that you commit to buy on a take or pay deal, and I put it maybe an irrevocable contract. So the whole idea of forward buying is that both parties expect the price is going to rise. Clearly, if you agree to fix the price at, let's say, the current price is 100 and you forward buy and you fix the price at 105, as an example, this is really good news, unless during the term of that agreement, the market price falls to 104, 103, and take or pay deals have some really notable disasters associated with them. So the period over which you agree to commit should be the period of visibility that you think prices are going to rise. Now, there's a posh phrase, demand management, but it's essentially buying less. There might be a number of ways in which we pay less. If you're buying with a strong freight component, you may onshore if that's possible, in order to take out the length of the supply chain and insulate yourself against either shipping or diesel costs. Obviously, you may end up paying a premium. I did an exercise for a client in the public sector. What was the domestic price premium for PPE if we source PPE in Australia compared to importing it? And the results were shocking. And it tells you that, that even though you may onshore, and reduce transport costs, the actual diseconomies of scale that exist both in Australia and in New Zealand may more than offset the saving in transport costs. If you're buying a service, you might choose to play games on the scope of works and say, do you know what, we'll do some of the services in-house and we won't buy as much externally. And the reason why this is relevant is that I've hinted to you that the next wave of inflation may be driven by wage increases. And while much of the source of inflation currently is driven by materials, goods, I think we will see inflation impacting upon services as well.